Welcome to Around the Blockchain. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's Monica, welcome. Thank you so much for jumping on. Look, just for the viewers, would you mind just giving us a bit of an introduction as to, I guess, who you are and what you do in the blockchain space?
My name is Monica Singer. I live in Cape Town, as you can see, beautiful background. I chose it on purpose. That's Table Mountain, Lion's Head, the beautiful ocean. So I work remotely for ConsenSys. I've been with ConsenSys 3.5 years, and I'm absolutely a believer and passionate about this new world that we are building. And that's why I joined ConsenSys, because I totally believe in Joe's vision. And when he asked me to join him, it was like the opportunity to be part of an amazing team that is going to change everything. We're changing. If I can tell you, I work remotely. Originally, I was meant to work in financial markets because that's my background, but the truth is that I'm involved in any project, and that's what I love my life. So every day, I don't really know what type of project I'm going to be working on, and it could be from an NFT, a non-fungible token, to track and trace, to the capital markets, to cryptocurrencies and central bank digital currencies. So some days I deal with very funky people, some days I deal with very conservative human beings. So I love that, because the one thing that I've got from the time I was born, I think, is that I get bored very quickly. And I always wanted to make a difference. So this whole new world, it was made for me, because I always wanted to be in a place where I could change things as they are. And I always knew that technology would be a catalyst for a better world in so many places. And the beauty is that, because I'm a baby boomer, I can talk, the language of both, so I can, sit with a baby boomer and try to explain to them the new world we're building. And then I can work with the millennials and learn from them, so I'm the bridge,
Yeah.
So I'm having a lot of fun.
Look, what is ConsenSys? For people who don't know, would you mind just sort of going through a little bit about what ConsenSys is and I guess what you guys do?
Okay, so ConsenSys, first of all, is the biggest blockchain company in the world. It started in 2015 by Joseph Lubin. Joe was one of the creators of Ethereum. So what I admired about him is that he really has the vision of how the world is going to change. And what he did is he's putting his money where his mouth is. So he's investing all of the money that he made in creating Ethereum in creating ConsenSys. ConsenSys is made up of over 600 people around the world. We from every country in the world. There's a lot of Australians, in Brisbane, in Melbourne, and Sydney. I don't know if we got anybody in Perth. I think we do. Yes, I think we do. So the point is, Australia is quite very heavily represented in ConsenSys, funny enough. And what we are all believers of this technology. So we joined Joe, who invested his money in employing people from all over the world, in saying, if you believe in this new world order that we are building, come and join me. And we did. As I said, I joined 3.5 years ago. And mainly the company is made up of software engineers. I confess, I'm not. I'm just a simple human being that I'm a chartered accountant. So for my sins, I love this technology, and in my next life, I'm going to become a software engineer. But in this one, I've given up on this, So I have to study and learn, and the team has to be very patient with me, because sometimes I don't understand the language. But you know what? It's good practice that they need to speak in plain English, because we need to speak in plain English to clients. So I always say, if you convince me, then I'm sure the central banks will get convinced. So it's also a good exercise for the techies to become more normal. So I test them, in saying, guys, really, that didn't make sense at all. Let's explain it in plain English. Because let's be honest, this new world order we're inventing, it started very techie type, like only the techies could understand it. But as we get more and more advanced, we realize that the only way to bring the rest of the world with us is to, and I'm not going to use the word dumb down. No, I'm not going to use that word. I'm going to say we're going to use plain English. So I always give this example to people. I said, do you know that the internet is built on TCP/IP technology? And people go, no. I said, you know what? Doesn't care. I don't care. You shouldn't care, because can you use the internet? Can you send an email? Yes. So what is behind it is not your problem. Let the techies worry about that. So the blockchain type technology and cryptocurrencies and other industries are still too techy for my liking. It has to come to a point that the user experience becomes so easy that, like now, my aunt, who's 85, she's an expert in Facebook, WhatsApp, all this social media. So I want her to also become an expert in buying, selling, and being able to do any transaction in the internet of value without having to feel overwhelmed or scared or whatever. So we're still not there yet, but we're going to get there.
Yeah, most definitely. Look, how did you meet Joseph? I actually watched an interview with you yesterday, and you had a really good story to tell about how you first met Joseph. Would you mind telling us that?
That story is, really, there are no coincidences. It's incredible. So, okay, so I ran this company for 20 years that I built. It's called the Central Securities Depository. So just picture this, central. So we built this technology and it ran the financial markets in South Africa, and every country in the world has got one company like that. So in Australia, actually in Australia, you've got two or even three. So in Australia, it's a part of the Australian Stock Exchange. It's called CHESS, that is being replaced at the moment. Then you have a Computer Share. I think they also run a Central Securities Depository in Australia. So what happens is that these companies, what they do, which is a company I built in South Africa, what we did is that we are the back office of the financial markets. So what we do is we capture in a central register all the information of all the trades in the stock markets. Okay, for equities, bonds, money market instruments, we are the holders of that database. And there are many problems, many. I can spend just a lecture telling you that even though I tried to do everything as best as we couldn't do it because the antibodies of the financial markets will prevent you from progressing. They will say, you need the intermediaries, you need 3 days between trading and settlement, you need a centralized database, which is not true, okay? But that's the brainwashing when we created the financial markets. You need Swift, you need mainframes. And then it's important that I give you a little bit of the history. So after running this company, it was successful, but I wanted to improve it further, and I couldn't improve it, and we can cover the problems in financial markets later. So I couldn't improve it, and I got stuck. And then one day I got a hold of Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper, Creating Bitcoin. That was in 2015. I was at a conference, and someone mentioned this. And I'm very inquisitive, so I went quickly, I Googled it, downloaded it, and I promise you, when I read it, I started crying. Why? Because Satoshi's thinking is we need to have a different level of consciousness to fix what's broken. Has to be completely different. We're not going to carry on trying to fix this in the same way. So when the financial crisis happened in 2008, January 2009, this white paper gets released to the world. We don't know who Satoshi is. And the paper says, you guys got it all wrong. You do not centralize the information because that has got huge problems. And you do not use intermediaries because we cannot trust them any longer. And I can write a book about why you cannot trust any intermediaries anymore. I'm a trained auditor, so I can assure you audits still fail. Why? Because auditors are human and we have natural biases and so forth and so forth. So the audit failures are epic, and they're still happening, and they're still showing that what we invented as the truth machine is not working. So Satoshi says the truth machine must not be reliant on people, must be reliant on code. So that's why we say in blockchain, the truth is in the computer and it's in code. So imagine that now I read this paper and the paper says, everything you've been doing is wrong. You need to decentralize, not centralize. So I went down the rabbit hole of investigating what does it mean to go and decentralize? How are we going to decentralize? And then when I realized how it's done, I just fell in love because imagine that I could, everything I wanted to achieve, the paper said you can. How? For example, I'll come back to how I made job. But first, let me finish my little story about, so what happens in capital markets, the investor, the buyer and the seller can never talk to each other, ever. Why? Because if you want to buy any stock, you have to go through a broker and you have to go through a custodian bank that goes through the central securities depository or the central counterparties or the central bank through the fiat. So this is a whole layer and layers and layers of intermediaries. And everybody takes a cut and everybody has an issue as to why they have a relevance in this market. So the investor can never ever talk to the buyer to the seller. Then the issuer, the one that is now listing its stock, can never know real time who's buying and selling the shares, ever. In order to get that information, it has to request it to all these intermediaries to put together the register, and that was the job of the company I ran, that we offer for a fee the list of transactions of who's buying and selling, but there was a time delay, blah, blah, blah. Then the other thing is the stock exchanges make a lot of money selling the data of who's buying and selling. So they're never going to give it to you real time. They're going to give it to you after the fact if you want it for free. And all stock markets take at least 2 days between trading and settlement. 2 days. And there's a saying in the market that says nothing good happens between T and T plus 2, between trading and settlement, nothing good. And we saw, for those that follow the GameStop saga, and what happened with Robinhood, exactly showing the problems with the plumbing. Exactly, that was like classic, And then you think, that should never happen. If you take the model of a cryptocurrency exchange, where the buyer and the seller is connected directly, where you trade on your own, where you don't need intermediaries, where there are no working hours, where the costs are very low, where you have an app, and with a little finger you can do whatever you want, transfer the crypto, buy, transfer, swap it between different currencies, real time, decentralized, and you keep the record of ownership, and you keep your keys. You don't have to call a bank to do this for you. So when you see this, you think, that's the future. Why would anybody in the crazy minds ever go to a stock exchange knowing what I just told you? Why? Why would you list as an issuer if you can actually list in the Internet of Value, in a cryptocurrency exchange in the future? You're going to be able to list your tokens and be able to access liquidity from anybody in the world. If you want to trade shares on the Australian Stock Exchange or the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the process of getting an account opening is a nightmare. And every stock exchange demands that you pay in the fiat currency of the country. So if you want to trade on the JSE, you're going to have to buy rands. If I want to trade in your stock exchange, I have to buy Aussie dollars. I cannot pay in crypto or any other fiat. And do you understand that all that adds to the layers of complexity? Definitely. So if I had to choose between buying shares in the Aussie Stock Exchange or Johannesburg Stock Exchange, or buying tokens that I have an app in my hand under my control, and I can pay it with any token, any currency, any crypto, anything, you tell me what I'm going to choose. No?
Of course.
Then, no? It's like such a no-brainer, you know? And that's why when I was CEO of STRAT, I said to the board, guys, we're not going to be relevant in the next 10 years because our income comes from the listings on the stock exchange. The more company trades on the JSE, the more we've got work to settle the transactions on the stock market. Remember, what I'm just explaining about STRAT applies to every single back office in every country. The Australian Stock Exchange, any stock exchange in the world operates the same way. So if the stock exchanges start running out of listed companies, then the whole machinery behind the stock exchanges will have no relevance. And I was very involved at an international level in the bodies of the World Federation of Central Securities Depositories, in the Africa Middle East. That was the Central Securities Depository, AMIDA. I was the vice president. So I was very, very involved. So I started giving speeches to my colleagues to say, guys, you need to get ready for this. This is coming. And your income is going to start reducing. People are not going to list on traditional exchanges. So because I could see the future, because it was a no-brainer, right? Really, it was like anybody could see it. If you're not stuck in your comfort zone, it was a no-brainer that it was going to happen. Huh? So I said to my board, I think that we can change and still be relevant, but we're going to have to decentralize the information. Imagine a board made up of all the banks and the stock exchange. Imagine the reaction, you know, like they thought I lost my marbles, you know, or I was smoking something. So, you know, truly, they really thought. So, you know what, I did try, it didn't work out. So the only solution for me was to say, cheers, you know, I have to leave because it feels like I'm rearranging the chairs in the Titanic. I could feel the Titanic was sinking. And the only thing they were asking me was to play around with the chairs. And I thought, are we kidding me? I have to get out of here. So thanks God I did. Okay, so now I leave STRAT. Remember, I was a CEO of one of the most established companies in financial markets. So it becomes news around the world that a CEO, chartered accountant, baby boomer in 2017 decides to leave. And I said, I'm leaving because I want to go and work on blockchain. You know, blockchain is my passion. And I'm going to live in Cape Town. I used to live in Johannesburg. And I'm going to look at the ocean. And while I'm looking at the ocean, I'm going to help the world implement blockchain. And that was August 2017. And then in the interview that I did with Michael Del Castillo, who currently works for Forbes, what happens is that he says, who would you like to work for? Huh? And what had happened in the last 3 years, I had attended a conference in New York in May called ConsenSys, but ConsenSys properly spelled. You know, I don't know if you know about this conference. I had attended that conference for 3 years, and I can tell you that it was like the best thing that ever happened to me. Every time the conference ended, I would want to start crying because I wanted more, because I was surrounded by people that thought like I thought. You know, it was like planet consensus. You know, it was like, oh my God, I belong here, you know?
Yeah.
So then when he says, what would you like to work? Where would you like? I said, you know what? I would love to work for a company like ConsenSys. Because what I was thinking is that I'm very good at teaching. So I thought, imagine if I work for ConsenSys and I can give speeches and I can arrange for educational events, blah, blah, blah. That was my thinking, no? So then he writes in the article, not ConsenSys, the conference. He writes ConsenSys, Joe's company, spelled differently, CONSYS. And I'm not a digital person, trust me. I'm constantly in the clouds, you know, I don't look at the T's, you know, and the I's and the nothing. So I don't check the article. The article goes viral. 15 days later, I get a call, you know, from someone in Johannesburg. And they said, we would like to have coffee with you. I said, oh, yeah, I love having coffee. I'm coming. So, so I arrived to this place. There was a laptop. The laptop opens, okay? And there was this person on the other side of the laptop. And this person says to me, what do you know about blockchain? And I, you know, the moment you ask me that, I don't stop, you know? And I started my lecture. I wanted to tell him, you know, he has to move into blockchain. And why? And did you know this? And did you know that? And then I go, and did you know about smart contracts? Do you know what they can do for financial markets? So I started lecturing, okay, this person on smart contracts. And this person does not interrupt me. And trust me, I didn't know who he was. Trust me, I didn't know who he was. And I've never heard of him. I never heard of anybody, you know, like him. Okay, so I confess, I was like a real idiot. Okay, so, okay, for an hour, we carry on talking. And he says, no, Monica, you need to come and work for me. I said, no ways. I'm going to Cape Town. I'm going to see at the ocean, look at the ocean. He says, no, you can live in Cape Town. You can do whatever you want, but work for me remotely. And I thought, no, why would I do that? I didn't know who he was. So imagine, you know. So I carry on for an hour, blah, blah, blah. Meeting ends, okay? Zoom ended. Close laptop. And the person that was with me, I looked at him and he looked really pale. And I go, what happened? And he says, that was the most weird interview I ever attended with Joe. And especially Joe. That was a long interview. And so I said to Pete, wait a second. That was not an interview. I was having coffee with someone virtually And we were chatting, friendly chat about how to change the world. He says, no, that was an interview, and that was Joe Lubin, the creator of ConsenSys. And then he tells me who Joe Lubin was. And I go, okay, that's it. Now I'm ready to commit suicide, jump in the ocean. I missed the opportunity of a lifetime. And I was an idiot because I did everything wrong. You know, like all those articles that tells you what to do in an interview.
Yeah.
Trust me, I did everything wrong. Everything. I interrupted him. I told to him like he didn't know what he was talking about. The creator of smart contracts. Oh my God, with Vitalik. I'm not teaching him how to do a smart contract. It was so stupid.
That's
And he never stopped me. It was terrible.
That's
Do you know how it felt?
I could imagine.
I wanted to just, dive in the ocean, never come
Yeah,
out.
crawl in a hole and never come out. Yeah, I could so imagine.
Do you agree?
Yeah,
Do you know
yeah.
how dumb I felt? I felt like I didn't. They say in interviews you must do research on the company, on the CEO. I knew nothing. Zero. And he still wanted me to work for him. So then what happened after I went through wanted to jump off the bridge, I found him. I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know who you were. Please give me a chance. He says, of course. And he says, no, you were not rude. We were exchanging ideas. So he was so beautiful. He was like totally cool about everything. And he is cool, So that's the rest is history. I've been working for him for 3.5 years. So it's been amazing.
Just for the viewers' sake, Joseph Lubin is a co-founder of Ethereum. So, and obviously he's invented ConsenSys as well. So just for a bit of context around that discussion for the viewers. Look, what are you guys working on at the moment at ConsenSys? I know that you've probably been quite busy. There's a lot of stuff going on recently. I did obviously read an article as well quite recently about you guys raising, a fair sum of money. You've got some pretty interesting investors as well. JP Morgan, you've got UBS, there was MasterCard as well. So what are you guys all sort of working on at the moment, if you can hopefully talk about some of that sort of stuff?
So as I said, we are working in all the key industries. Okay, so just think about it, that blockchain mainly affects financial markets. Remember the initial idea by Satoshi was a cryptocurrency for the world. Then came Ethereum in 2014 with Vitalik and a group of people, which included Joe, that created the concept of the Ethereum being the Internet of Value, and the concept of the smart contracts. And smart contracts are the most brilliant creation that was ever made. Just briefly for your listeners, if they don't know what a smart contract is, but a smart contract is like a vending machine. You get a vending machine and it tells you, okay, if you press B1 and you put $20, you'll get a Diet Coke. You don't argue with the machine. No, the machine, if you do this, you're going to get this. No argument. No? Okay.
Yeah, correct.
So that's a smart contract. If you do this, you're going to get this. I'll give you a practical example, which for me is incredible that no insurance company has implemented this yet. So this is a tip. Insurance companies will get disrupted because someone is going to do this, okay, which is simple. As you know, when you buy insurance, you go through a broker, lots of intermediaries, blah, blah, blah. You have to fill in a form, make a phone call, and when you want to claim, it's a whole story. That's going to be history, because insurance policies should be a smart contract. If you die, this is who gets paid. I just died. It triggers the smart contract, I get paid. Do you understand? There shouldn't be a conversation about this.
Definitely.
If you die, you get paid. That's it. But I think the insurance companies don't want to do it because I think they love the inefficiencies. But some insurance companies are going to say, my competitive advantage is going to be to give this to the people. And then people will move, because who's going to want to be with an insurance company that delays payment of the benefits? So watch this space. So the smart contract is created, and that is also a massive game changer. So as I said, we are working in all the industries that this technology are totally a no-brainer. Another example, supply chain, trade finance. For your listeners, what is supply chain? Is, for example, the farmer plants, the produce, then comes someone with a truck, then it goes to a central depot, then it gets distributed, eventually gets to the supermarket, and eventually gets to the people. In South Africa, I don't know how it is in your retailers, but some of our retailers are paying the producers 3 months after the goods were sold.
Wow.
That is unacceptable. Think about that this technology not only tracks the produce and everybody can see the same information. I don't know if you know that. What is the blockchain? The blockchain is really a shared version of the truth. Shared version of the truth combined with smart contracts, combined with cryptographic mathematical formulas that prevents cheating. But everybody gets to see the information at the same time. So you get an app and you can track exactly where the goods were that you bought, let's say, salad, lettuce, that you can, with a QR code, you go to a supermarket, you're going to read where that salad was planted, when, how did it happen? Why? Because this technology tracks and traces from the beginning. It has an amazing ability to have provenance, complete audit trail, and everybody can see where it went and how it happened. So the logic is that the goods, the producers, and all the parties in a transaction should be paid as the goods get sold, not 3 months later, you know,
definitely.
immediately. Why? Because the smart contract will say, these goods were sold, therefore I get paid. No debate, no argument, you know. So, okay, so that's supply chain. Trade finance, as you know, is all this whole process of importing and exporting goods from the moment it leaves the factory in China until it gets to wherever it's going. That whole steps, the shipping, the ports, all the parties get to see what's going on, and everybody gets paid when the conditions of the contract are being met. And that gives incredible efficiencies for the banks that are financing all the transactions, because they can track, they can measure the risk, the data is real time. So it's a game changer. Of course, capital markets. Capital markets, I can give you a lecture just on capital markets. Why? Because as I said to you before, the stock market, traditional stock markets, are going to totally start losing a market share. I'm sure you saw the slides that talk about Coinbase listing. Coinbase listing achieved a market cap higher than all the stock exchanges, higher than New York Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange. We don't even mention Australia or South Africa. So, and then, I don't know if you heard, which I predicted a long time ago, another announcement that it blew me away. I fell off my chair when Binance announced last week, or this week, life, changes so quickly. So when Binance announced that they're going to allow people to trade Tesla shares in their
I did see
platform,
that, yeah.
which is what I predicted. I said, listen, if the cryptocurrency exchanges can do this real time, blah, 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 why would they not do it for shares listed in the stock market? And then in that way, you do not have to go through the pain and the intermediaries and all the terrible things that happen in traditional stock market. You now have a platform that works real time across borders, in the Internet of Value, whatever. So that's why everything I predicted is happening. And I'm like sitting here saying, ha, I told you so. But you know what? I don't do that. I don't do that. I just carry on. Okay, what else am I working on? The next one, Ryan, listen, this is classic. If I tell you this one. So it was 3 years ago, I was so lucky that there was a conference of all the central banks in the world in South Africa. And they asked me to give a presentation to them. So my presentation was to, and these people, only job, okay, in the central banks that they come from, their only job is to look after coins and notes. They're the cash issuers. They, this whole issue of producing the notes and the coins and the cleaning and the transporting is a massive undertaking. And in South Africa, 1.5% of the GDP gets spent in this process. Okay, wow. So we're talking massive cost to the economy just to manage cash.
Yeah.
Okay? And just remember, South Africa is a very hectic country. We have a lot of crime. So all these vans that transport the poor cash, get bombed, the ATMs get bombed, the people get stolen the cash. So cash is Not a good idea, okay? So now I gave them a speech and I said, guys, I'm sorry to tell you, but I think your jobs are going to slowly start disappearing because people will stop using cash and coins. And nobody spoke to me at tea time, of course. I was persona non grata. It was like, oh my God, nobody likes me here. Okay, so, and I didn't know about COVID. I really didn't. The only reason why I predicted cash will die because of cryptocurrencies. You know, if I can pay with crypto, why would I need notes and coins? It's dumb, you know? So, because of all the problems that I can tell you in South Africa, cash is a bad idea. So, okay, so I was persona non grata. Then COVID comes, okay? Wow, nobody wants to touch cash. So it wasn't me, okay? I just, you know. And then the other thing that happened, it was incredible. So I went to central banks and I kept on saying, I think you really should be inventing a currency that it's collateralized by your fiat currency. Because if you do not do that, people are going to stop using your fiat. Fiat is the money that is backed by the central bank in your country, the Aussie dollar, in my country, the rand, the US dollar, the yen, the euro. And I said, I think you really have to get on with the program and create something that people will use as a cryptocurrency, call it a stable coin, call it something. But you need to get your act together. And of course, central banks dismissed me saying, are you mad? Why would I do that? And I said, one day you're going to regret this because people are going to stop using your currency. Okay, and then what happened? Last year, it was last year or the year before, I'm losing track because last year was a terrible year. So I think it was the year before that Facebook announced the project called Libra.
Yep.
And the consortium, and they're going to issue a stable coin. At that time, they were not sure how they're going to back this stable coin. Originally, they were talking about a portfolio of shares being back in Libra, but now then they got into big pressure in terms of nobody trusts them, what they're going to do with the data, blah blah blah. So the government in America went absolutely crazy, and they then started becoming more and more responsible in the way that they were building the stable coin by putting all the controls, meeting all the legal requirements, and eventually they changed the marketing to DM. It's no longer Libra, it's DM. Many of the original partners left, Visa, MasterCard, all of them left because they realized that they could create their own stable coins. Why would they be part of a consortium that had already started in a bad footing? And I don't know if you know the story, but at that time, the regulators were getting so scared that they wrote letters to some of the members of the consortium and said, if you carry on doing this, we're going to start asking more questions about you. Okay, so they got scared, they left. Little did we know that they decided to do their own stable coins. As you know, the announcement was 2 weeks ago when Visa announced that they will allow you to use USDC, which is a stable coin. You can use your stable coins with using your credit card. Is that magical word? No?
Very, yeah.
Mind-boggling.
Most definitely.
That is so clever. And then PayPal, when they said you can use crypto, and then MasterCard is going to do the same. And trust me, the credit cards know that the world will not use credit cards in the future. In the same way I predicted cash will disappear, credit cards will disappear because people want to go peer-to-peer and you don't want to go via a credit card, an intermediary. So they are getting on with the program. As you know, MasterCard invested in ConsenSys. And therefore, they are adapting to this new world order that is coming. So coming back to central banks didn't. But when Facebook announced that they were doing this, remember Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, they have around 2.3 billion people using these applications.
Yeah.
So imagine that in the future, you're a user of any of these three, and then you get a DM coin. Why? And they create an ecosystem that you can pay, buy, sell, transfer. Why would you ever come out of the ecosystem? Why would you ever go back to the Aussie dollar? Why? Give me a reason. That you're going to have choices, cryptocurrencies, stable coins backed by many things, collateralized by fiat, collateralized by crypto, collateralized by an algorithm and collateralized by hard assets like gold and diamonds, you're going to have an app that will give you a choice as to how to pay. Do you realize how this is going to change? For example, the big problem of remittances. Remittances in Africa, it's a terrible story because people in South Africa send money all over Africa. And this money gets sent in such very antiquated ways that the money gets lost, and or it never arrives, it's very costly. The bank charges, as I said, I come from Uruguay originally. I send money to my family in Uruguay. It takes longer to arrive than if I took the plane and took it to them myself.
Wow.
Why? Because there's no relationship between the Uruguayan peso and the rand. So you have to go rand dollar through a correspondent banking in New York. So the money goes from here to US to Uruguay. Everybody takes a cut. Sometimes it goes into a dark hole. You never know when it's going to come out, So all of that, it's unacceptable, and South Africa, if you have a look at the World Bank website, it lists South Africa as one of the most expensive countries to do remittances. So if I'm sending, let's say $100 to my family a month, and 10% gets taken by the banks, that's robbery. So all of these things that now we know are wrong, then please, let's talk about, okay, so let me go finish my story because I'm going to go in a tangent. So I'm now working with central banks. They finally woken up. There's a study by the BIS that says that I think it's 80% of the central banks are studying implementing what is called central bank digital currency. So in 2018, we did a proof of concept for the South African Reserve Bank that eliminates the real-time gross settlement system. I'm going to explain this so your listeners understand this. Every country in the world, operates in the following way. The central bank, it acts as like the referee, if that's in plain English. Every night, it gets the balances by all the banks in the country connected to the central bank. And they know, so for example, if I pay you during the day, and I am with one bank and you are with a different bank, that transaction hasn't really settled between us. Maybe my bank will reflect it in my account immediately. But when they do, they actually give me a loan. The amount only settles between banks through the night when the central banks move the money between their banks. It's called the interbank settlement. And it uses the real-time gross settlement system. Every bank in the world does. In order to do this, the central bank would require the banks to give collateral. So why? Because the central bank says, I'm not going to take the risk that overnight you can go under and I have to deliver this payment. So in order to prevent any counterparty risk, I will ask you for collateral. So imagine millions and millions is sitting in a bank account doing nothing but just protecting the central bank. So that's money that could be liquidity in the market. And it takes overnight. It's an overnight process. It's not real time, normally batch processing. So now we did a proof of concept. It's called wholesale central bank digital currencies, where we prove that instead of doing an overnight process to settle between banks, you could settle real time between banks, real time, during the day, and no collateral. So it was a magic proof of concept. It was so successful, the central bank in South Africa got a prize for innovation, but they got scared. They said, we don't want to implement this. We don't want to be the first one. The rest of the world is on the RTGS system. We're not going to proceed. And they didn't. Very sad. And then life changed because we all realized, like there are many projects that many central banks have done. It's called the wholesale CBDC. It's all very nice. But the truth is that if you have to use time and resources, you should, as a central bank, you should not be doing wholesale. You should be doing retail. What is retail CBDC? Is to give another option to the citizens besides cash. So you teach everybody how to use a wallet, an e-wallet. You can download it for them. You can teach them. And then once you've got your own wallet, You have what is called a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, backed by the rand, backed by the Aussie dollar, but it's controlled by the central bank of the country. Why? Because all of the money except cash that you have is not backed by the central bank. It's backed by the commercial bank where you have your account. That gives you huge counterparty risk. That bank goes under. The only thing that protects you in developed countries is that there's a deposit insurance that the government buys and the banks buy. But in most countries in the world that are not developed, that insurance does not exist. So I have to explain to you that in developed countries, you don't have that risk. You can sleep better at night. Banks in general don't go under. They're properly regulated. But in most developing countries, I'm sorry to say, banks still go under. Why?
Yeah.
Because of many reasons. I can do another lecture just on that. Sorry, I'm a professor, so really the professor in me comes through all the time. I want to lecture,
No,
tell
that's
the
fine.
story, because, people don't, what has happened with this new blockchain and the Internet of Values, that for the first time, we are all waking up to the fact that we every single human being should be learning about finance. Do you see what I'm saying? Why? Just think about it. We all have to pay for something every day. Somewhere along the line, someone told us we don't need to learn about finance. And if you're a woman, even worse, someone told us, don't worry, your husband will look after you. Really? That's not true. So please, especially for your ladies watching this, don't ever rely on your husband. Just be financially independent. Learn about finance. Simple finance, how to open a bank account. Some women don't even know how to open a bank account. Oh my God. So, okay. So in the future, I'm getting
No, that's
so
fine.
in the future, you know what? I can assure you, my grandchildren will say to me, Grandma, what was a bank branch?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, forget it. It's something they created a museum of all the bank branches. They don't exist anymore. Let's go to the museum where we had a bank branch. Bank branches are not going to be needed. People really start closing them down. It's a waste of money. Okay, and start educating the public how to use technology. And the technology can be basic. If I tell you that I'm working with a company that has invented a little device that you don't need to even know how to read or write. It uses biometrics. It's very easy to transfer, and it doesn't even need the internet. It gets charged once a day. So all the data, it's only once a day. So it's very simple. It's very practical for South Africa and Africa. So we can make this user experience accessible to everybody. So that's not even an excuse, Then the other excuse that we get is privacy. You know what? I've read so many papers on this topic. First of all, the technology can achieve privacy. It's up to the central bank of that country to decide at what level of privacy you're going to allow. Like China believes in centralization, no privacy, control everything. But other countries, like for example in America, I've seen the paper on the digital dollar saying, if we allowed cash transactions up to $10,000 to be private, no AML, no KYC, know your client, anti-money laundering, for transactions less than $10,000, then for digital currencies, we should allow that also to be private. So this is not about, Big Brother watching you. People are inventing stories. This is really about giving people options and ensuring that the power, the influence of the fiat currency in your country does not disappear. Because I can assure you, if we don't do this for the citizens, especially the younger generation, they will learn about crypto. They will learn about stable coins and DM and any other stablecoin that is going to be created. And they will never touch the fiat currency of that country ever again. And that is a disaster for the central bank because they lose the ability to set monetary policy. Huh?
Yeah.
So this I've been saying for a long time, and now I'm working with many central banks finally. And ConsenSys, what it has done is that we built a sandbox. What is a sandbox? If you are scared of this technology as a central bank, we are saying we're creating it it's a website that you can come and create your own currency, as a cryptocurrency, as a stable coin. You can practice, you can learn, we will give you training, you can experiment, because you know what, the truth be told about this technology, you only really get it when you are using it. So, I give lots of speeches, and I always ask the question to my audience. So, for example, I had an audience of very high worth individuals, 500 of them, in a room. And I said, hi Ned, okay, very wealthy. And I said, out of all of you, please raise your hands. Who has ever bought cryptocurrency? Any crypto? If I tell you out of 500, it's 10 raise their hands.
Wow.
And I went, God, guys, you are missing out on the best opportunity of a lifetime. That was 2 years ago. Imagine if they had invested in ETH or Bitcoin 2 years ago. At least I'm glad that in my conscience, I told everybody. I told everybody. I told my family. I told my friends. Nobody listened, So now they mustn't get jealous, if my portfolio is doing well, because I told, So the point is that people are not listening. So I'm glad that things are happening in the world so that people are going to start saying, wow, maybe she wasn't mad. Maybe she's got a point, And then hopefully they're going to start reading, because truly the first thing you have to do is download an app, any app, the millions of cryptocurrency exchanges around the world, choose the one that you're happy with, and just invest $100 Aussie. It's not going to hurt your income or, your portfolio, none. 100, and start playing, buy, sell, transfer, swap it with other currencies. When you start getting that emotion, like, imagine sitting in your bed, 3:00 in the morning on a Sunday morning, you can't sleep, you open your app and you start trading. I love that. Because it's not working hours, no working hours, no public holidays. I'm not phoning an intermediary. I'm not getting charged stupid. I don't have to fill in forms as to what am I doing with this, The financial independence that it gives you, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. So I want that for everybody in the world. And I don't know if you know, but it's so sad. There are close to above more than 1 billion people, 1 billion people in the world that do not have access to any financial product, nothing. They live day by day with little cash. Why? It's very simple, because nobody cared about them. So when we created the financial markets, we only did it for the people that could afford it. Like, if you buy shares on the stock exchange, the costs of buying are horrific. So you have to really buy a big chunk before it's worth it to pay those costs. No?
Yeah, most definitely.
So I give you numbers. In South Africa, we've got 56 million people. Do you know that investors, direct investors, there's also indirect investors through pension funds and other mediums. But direct investors, we had 2 million. 2 million! That's it.
Wow.
You see the point?
Yeah.
And that, I promise you, that statistic, you can actually, see it in many, many countries, okay? Especially developing countries. The numbers are very, very small. And that means, and then property, look, Australia, the barrier of entry to buy a house. Now, let's be honest, your property is one of the most expensive assets that anybody can own, no?
Yeah, definitely.
So that barrier of entry, how do we lower it? By very simple new technology. And that's one of the projects I'm also working on in many countries. I love this project. Why? Because it's going to ensure financial inclusion. So one of the projects is to say, what if I can tokenize, I can create a digital representation of your house, okay? And I am able to then say to you, you can sell your tokens fractionally. So let's assume you issue 100 tokens that represent your complete ownership of your house, and you can now sell some of those tokens. You're not selling your property, you're selling ownership in your property, because your property has the potential, I'm assuming, to increasing in value. So as the value of your house increases, all the people that bought the token will get the increase in value. So the day that they sell the token will be valued against the value of your house, and therefore they're going to make money. They're going to increase the wealth. And you can even put a smart contract into the token to say, guys, I'm selling the token, but I'm not selling the use of the property. I'm staying in my house. That's it. Or you could say, you know what, this house, I'm going to put it in Airbnb, and as I earn income, I'm going to distribute the income to the token holders. So can you see that the token holder didn't have to pay for transfer fees, for lawyers, for the deposit to get the mortgage, and is now getting a token that is going to increase in value because real estate in many places increases in value over time. So for the first time, you can share with people that never had the ability to increase their wealth by allowing them to buy $100 of Aussie dollars a month of tokens of real estate. And you know what? I've been saying this forever. One day, this is my imagination, but it's happening today. So I'm also vindicated. And I said, one day I'm going to have an app. And in my app, I'm going to have tokens for real estate, of any real estate, from the Burj Khalifa in Dubai to, I don't know, give me any other famous building. Yes, the Sydney Opera House.
Oh yeah, I was just about to say the Sydney Opera House. Yeah,
Sydney Opera House. I'm going to be able to have a token. Can you imagine? I can say I own a piece of the Sydney Opera House. No kidding, you will. One day someone that owns the Sydney Opera House, they'll realize they'll make more money selling the tokens of the Opera House than the theater productions that didn't happen for a year because of COVID. So just think, are you with me what I'm trying to tell you? Okay.
Most definitely, yeah.
Saying, how do I monitor? I'll give you an example. Stadiums. We haven't been to a stadium for a year. How are these people maintaining the stadiums? It's very expensive to maintain a stadium. And you haven't had any income for a year? Monetize the stadium. Create a token. Sell the tokens. People would love to own part of a stadium. Give me a famous stadium in Australia.
Well, the only one, the Melbourne Cricket Ground, the MCG.
Excellent.
Pretty famous.
Is that something that people will kill to own a piece? Would
Most
they
definitely.
say, oh my God? Like, I give you an example. In Brazil, there's a stadium, I'm a soccer fan. So there's a stadium called Maracanã. Maracanã is, if I tell you, it's in everybody's history. We all remember Uruguay won the World Cup against Brazil in the Maracanã. Imagine.
Wow.
Imagine that one day I'm going to be able to say, can you see, I've got a little percentage token of the Maracanã. Wow, it's massive. People will trade it, will love it, will appreciate it, will hold it more than crypto. I'm telling you now. Why am I telling you this story? Because these are all the projects I'm working on. Okay, so eventually, and now in the last month or two, seeing people sold for $69 million his work of art, everybody's talking about non-fungible tokens, which is art. So I always said, one day I'm going to own a very tiny percentage of the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to sell that one. I'm a holder. But some people are traders. So people will start trading. They will swap the Mona Lisa for the Burj Khalifa, for the Sydney Opera House, for crypto, for other assets, just by the touch of a button, without intermediaries, paying in any currency, in any crypto, in any stable coin. Can you picture the world we're building?
Yeah.
Can you picture? This is ConsenSys. ConsenSys is working on all these projects I just mentioned. Look, we are at the very beginning. This is just baby steps, no? And when I talk to people, they still think I'm mad. But I'm not mad, because I promise you, I work with a team of the most clever people in the world, 800 of them around the world, engineers. This is how they're thinking. But wait, I haven't told you the big story. The biggest thing that I am like in awe every day, I'm like, oh, I can't believe we're doing this. So that's the beauty of working for ConsenSys, because you get to learn everything that everybody's doing. So the most incredible thing we're doing is I don't know if you heard about it. Have you heard of decentralized finance?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, you tell me what is decentralized finance, because for me, I'll tell you, but I want you to give me your explanation. So
yeah, definitely. So decentralized finance, basically, I guess the traditional financial system sort of uses, intermediaries. So like in the form of banks, obviously they have, a central bank, that sort of thing. Decentralized finance basically is the complete opposite. So it's finance that's accessible to people without the need of any sort of intermediaries. So, you can take out loans, peer-to-peer loans, you can trade peer-to-peer, that sort of stuff you mentioned before as well. Like we're probably not going to need credit cards in the future, stuff like that. So yeah, that's sort of my interpretation of, decentralized finance in a bit of a nutshell. Obviously it's quite a bit more complicated than that, but that's just a sort of short explanation.
And the most thing that people don't really know is that this is not decentralized finance doesn't create like a legal entity with board members and shareholders and all that infrastructure of complexity and regulatory crazy environment. It's simply a smart contract. It's a smart contract in the internet where you go in and the smart contract knows that like if you go to the ABE, AABE, for example, website, it's a smart contract. It's not a group of employees that are deciding whether or not they're going to give you the loan. They're not going to judge you if you are white or black or a woman or developed country or developing country or no bias. You go in, you put your details, and the algorithm works out how much loans can you get. Is that
amazing? It takes away all the it takes away all the bias and stuff like that. I used to work at a bank, in a retail bank, and
you see?
Yeah, exactly. It was all, user input. You would take into account the person's demeanor that was sitting in front of you. What sort of, transactions and stuff that they've had in their transaction history, all that sort of stuff went into it. So taking away all that sort of bias and that sort of thing. Like you mentioned before.
How many lives have a bank manager destroyed because the buyers did not allow that person to get a loan?
Yeah.
That's basic what I'm asking you. No?
Yeah, 100%.
And now you've got a computer that you go in and gives you the loan.
Yeah.
And it pays you different varieties of yields, and the yields are better than any yields you can get in any bank today.
Yeah.
So if that's not going to totally disrupt financial markets, I don't know what's going to. And I promise you, when I joined ConsenSys, that did not exist. This only happened in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, it's now beyond my imagination. I thought I had a good imagination, but this one, no, they beat me. Imagine no people, no offices, no filing cabinets, nothing. No board members, I had a board of, directors, board of directors, a CEO, it is so frustrating to have a group of board members. So the issue is no more bias, no more intermediaries, like you said, the cost, easily accessible. You can be sitting in the middle of the Sahara Desert and you can get a loan. You don't need to drive to a bank branch to have a chat and dress up to meet with a bank manager.
Yeah. Look, you covered quite a bit there. Obviously, we went through NFTs, insurance, capital markets, supply chain, central bank digital currencies. What does all this mean in emerging markets, do you think? What's going to happen to, you mentioned third world countries and, South Africa and some African countries. What's all this sort of technology going to mean for them?
So this is a massive opportunity. Just picture this. Can I give you my imagination, okay?
Definitely.
But it's not my imagination. It's like just no-brainer. When you see what we're building and you see the current reality, you bring the two together and you go, of course, it's going to happen. Okay, so just remember, it's easier to implement this technology in countries that are developing. Why? Because we don't have the legacy systems and all the people saying to you, we've been doing this for 50, 200, 300 years. No? The double entry journal entries were invented 500 years ago. So It was a monk called Pacioli, a Machiavellian counter. So Pacioli invented double entry. Now we have thrown that away and said no more double entry. Now we're going to have what is called triple entry accounting because everybody can see the entries at the same time. No silos, no reconciliation, no auditor coming a year later. It's going to get the information real time. Artificial intelligence will detect the biases. All the planning will be defined by robotics, etc. So that changes the profession of accountants, auditors, lawyers. With smart contracts, no more contracts to sign. Once I sign a contract that had so many pages, it took me an hour and a half to initial every single page. Really, lawyers? And the amount that I pay lawyers for that contract is something that I don't want to even entertain. So all that disappears. Okay, but wait, coming back to developing countries. So developing countries cannot argue we've been doing this forever, because we don't. We're not doing this. So this is a chance, because you don't care where the person is. The person could be sitting anywhere in the biggest township, in the tin roof house, in a place. How do you call it? We call it. In Brazil, they call them favelas. In South Africa, we call them townships. In places where people have just a very little hut with electricity, and that's it. If you live in those conditions, you can now work for ConsenSys if you are able to get access to the internet, a computer, and access to a course which is online. Everything I know in terms of this technology and this industry, I learned it myself in the internet. I didn't need a degree to go to university, to pay $100,000 a year to Harvard to go and get a degree. You can actually get financial independence by getting yourself educated to learn how to program in Solidity, in so many other languages, and many professions are now totally freely available in the internet. So imagine, start with education. You can access all the people that we left behind, because they couldn't afford the high fees of going to a Ivy League university. That becomes irrelevant. Vitalik, creator of Ethereum, he didn't go to any university. He was 19 when he invented Ethereum. Come on, it can be done. Yes, I know, I'm not discounting universities. Trust me, I'm a professor at one. And I love, my education is fine. But the education just it taught me how to learn. But today, with all the technology that is available, you can practice on your own and learn on your own. And there are so many courses that are available. So let's start with education. Now we're reaching the masses, no matter the economic strata. Okay? Then I just told you about how we're inventing all this technology for money. Money is being reimagined. Then I just told you that we're going to invent tokens so that people can enjoy becoming wealthy just by buying tokens to the level of money that they can invest. $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever you can invest. And you're creating your own pension fund. Pension funds in South Africa have gone negative for the last 5 years. No return. So the money that was, why? Because the regulation in South Africa, which is the same in many countries, I bet you it's the same in Australia, it says that a massive percentage must be invested in the stock exchange of your country. So if your stock exchange is not creating returns, your pension fund is going the other way. When if you had invested the same amount of money in crypto, today you could be a multi-billionaire.
Yeah.
I'm not saying put your money all in crypto. I'm saying minimum 10% of your wealth should be in crypto. I'm a chartered accountant, so we know that in investment theory is that you have to put money into different instruments. And part of it is high risk instruments. So treat your investment in crypto and other instruments in this world as a high risk. But look at the returns. Okay, so for developing countries, it's also going to mean financial inclusion. Do you know how sad is to see how many people have to walk kilometers to get to a bank? Then they get to the bank, and the bank treats them terribly. And they say, where's your ID? So billions of people in the world don't have identification. Now, thanks God, we're inventing biometrics, and to create an ID is going to be much simpler. And then I want to tell you a little bit later, remind me of self-sovereign identity. But imagine that they get to the bank, they don't have an ID. Or they cannot prove residence. If you don't prove residence in this country, you cannot open a bank account. Some people live in shacks that have no address, or they sleep in the streets. How are they going to prove address? How? Proof of address. It's a stupid requirement. why should you have to live somewhere in order? Maybe some people are constantly changing. They live on nomads. You know, how many people live as nomadic? The movie that's going to win, I think, the Oscar called Nomadland. You must watch it. It's beautiful. These people live in nomadic lives. You know, they have a trailer and they live in different. How are they going to ever proof of address? They can't. So that means we excluded them from the banking system. That's it. And then the bank charges. The bank charges are ridiculous. Don't get me started. So what I'm saying is that that's why we excluded everybody. No?
Yeah.
So we see how we created a world that it was only caring about people with money, not the people without. And in doing that, we perpetuated poverty, because they're stuck in that reality, and they have no ways to increase the wealth. You know, passive income, how? Never. They live mouth to mouth every day, and we didn't give them any other option. Or worse, that kills me, to see the beggars in the street. Nobody's giving them money. Why? Because people are not carrying cash, and people don't want to open the window because they're scared of COVID. So now how are these people going to live? Imagine that in future, they'll have a card with a QR code, and the only thing you have to do is you do like this, you know, with the QR code of your card against their card, and you program it that it gives them an automatic donation that goes to their wallet, and they can have money to succeed, to live. You know, I am very much a believer that those that have must help those that have not.
Yeah.
That for me is a non-negotiable, and this technology is going to enable this to happen. But you have to have the will of the central bank, of the market, of the government to implement it, and it can be implemented. It's so simple. And you know what? When I ran the company before, it was so complicated because we used mainframes and Swift messages, and the technology was really, really hard to integrate. So every time we made any changes, it will take 2 to 3 years to implement at a massive cost. This technology, as I said, today we can connect any central bank to our Sandbox. In a couple of days, they can be issuing central bank currencies. In a couple of days.
That's amazing.
One day, I think that ConsenSys is going to make the Sandbox open so everybody can play with it. It is so easy to create currencies and to pay and transfer and create a record and smart contracts. That's the magic, which is the same magic in the decentralized finance world. You know, where these websites are popping up, and you can do any transaction, not only lending, automated market making, which is this ability to trade, and the data becomes freely available, real-time settlement and transferring from anywhere in the world. So I don't know if you think I'm mad. I really am not mad, because
No,
this,
definitely not.
No,
not at all.
It's the world of consensus. This is what we are building. You know, that's why I know it sounds for someone that I'm futuristic. Some CEOs, you know what they tell me when I give presentations and I talk like that? They said, I'll be retired before this comes into operation. I said, well, are you retiring the next year? You know, because it's happening, you know? And this is the internet. And the internet means that it doesn't matter that Australia is down under and you think that you're far away from everybody. The internet can reach anybody. So your Australian marketplace is going to compete with the world marketplace. So if your banks don't get their act together and your central bank doesn't get their act together, people will start moving, you know, into investing in other financial products available in the internet that are not Australian.
Yeah, they're just going to get left behind if they don't jump on board soon enough.
Do you agree?
Yeah, most definitely.
That's it. The down under story. No, we isolated. You know how they become obsessed in Australia if you even bring an apple. Okay, trust me, the internet is really true.
Yeah, definitely.
I've been stopped in your customs for an apple. So, so what I'm saying is that nothing will prevent this from coming to your country. Nothing. It's happening today as we speak. Many of your people are already in another trading and buying and selling outside of your jurisdiction. So the only way to be competitive is to get on with the program. The banks must get on by issuing their own stable coins or joining this movement. The central bank should be issuing a central bank digital currency for the people. And you know what? Especially developed countries are sitting waiting because they think that it's not going to affect them. It will. I'm sorry to say. Nobody's going to stop it. This is like water. It finds a way.
You mentioned
Especially
you mentioned you were working with quite a few central banks to issue central bank digital currencies. How has that been? Have they been quite receptive to this new information and new technology, or has there been some hurdles along the way?
The latest ones, super open, like the Bank of Thailand. I don't know if you heard about it. The Bank of Hong Kong, the Saudi Arabia project. The one that is fascinating for me to watch. Really, I had a chuckle. So the one that was really funny was the Swiss. Okay, so the Swiss central bank. If you go 3 years back, 2 years back, 3 years back. They issued papers saying, I read all of them. So the paper said, we don't need central bank digital currency. We're doing great. Our technology, we're the best country in the world in payment, blah, 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 blah. No? Then the stock exchange in Switzerland, which is incredibly progressive, announced that they were going to tokenize the shares in the stock exchange. And great, like what Binance is today, they're going to create it in the traditional stock exchange. Good for them, clever. The CEO is amazing. Thomas Thieb, really, I know him for many years. The first CEO to ever take that decision in that brutal way, And so then what he decided is that if you've got the shares tokenized, you need a payment mechanism that is also tokenized. So he says, because the central bank in Switzerland is not coming to the party, I'm going to create a stable coin backed by the Swiss franc under the control of the commercial banks. So that means that stock exchanges transactions will happen in commercial bank funds, which in all the books of the stock market, it tells you that settlement of stock market transactions should not happen in commercial bank funds. It should happen in central bank funds. Okay? Why? Because central banks don't fail, and therefore it's a higher level of assurance for the market if you settle with central bank funds. But the CEO said, listen, you're not coming to the party, I'm going to do my own thing. And he did. So he started practicing, the settlement with commercial bank funds. Guess what happened? The central bank said, sorry guys, we better get our act together. So they're now looking at implementing. So do you understand that it's complex? It's very complex because for us it's normal. But if you are over 50 and someone talks to you like this, you need to do so many changes in your mindset, that the first reaction is, I'm not going to do this, I need another lifetime to learn it. So it's hard. It's hard to create because it's very disruptive, very disruptive. So people need to start learning from the beginning,
Most definitely.
And not everybody wants to do that,
To me, I was alive when the internet first came about, but I've sort of grown up with the internet as a child. So to me, it wasn't massively foreign, but I feel like it's exactly the same as that. It's like, the initial adoption of the internet. And Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this all the time. If you weren't using the internet, in the early 2000s, you were sort of laughed about. And then obviously it started to get more and more popular. And now literally, you probably couldn't really imagine life without using it. That to me is what, cryptocurrency and blockchain and Bitcoin and Ethereum, that to me is, what's happening in that space. It's eventually, 5-10 years time, it's not going to be talked about like something foreign. It's just going to be completely normal, and it's going to be integrated into every sort of facet of everybody's lives. Look, you mentioned as well self-sovereignty. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? Then I have one more question for you as well.
Okay. So self-sovereign identity is also it's going to blow you away. What does it mean? When the internet was created, 1993 and 94, it was created really for exchanging of information, okay? And then it evolved. So first, before I answer self-sovereign, I'm going to tell you about the internet evolution.
Yeah,
So
sure.
then, so then the internet, and then at that time, remember, I'm older than Google, so trust me, I was there when the internet was created. I saw my first email, I saw the whole thing, okay? I saw the first mainframe, you know. I don't look so old, but I am, okay? So the point is that I've got the history, okay? So I've seen it. So yes, it was so scary. You know that we used to send an email and then phone the other person and say, did you get it? I saw the first fax. You don't understand how amazing it was to see a fax coming through a fax machine. It was amazing. Okay, so the point really was amazing. So I'm glad that I had the history because I'm still completely in awe of everything that's happening now. So, okay, so what happens is when the internet was created, it was created as an intranet. Why? Because everybody was scared, truly scared of sending an email or anything in the big wild internet. And then people would say, no, the internet is going to be used for bad things. And at the beginning it was used for porn and for gambling and blah, blah, blah. It's like a knife. You can use the knife to kill someone or to cut your meat, no?
Yeah.
So the internet evolved. Eventually the intranet disappeared, you know? And then what happened, and I promise you that I would have never, if you had said to me in 1994 or 95, that one day I was going to have an app, a simple app that I could press a button and I could talk for free in the internet to my children around the world, I would have said, nah, you're kidding me. Because when I emigrated to South Africa, I had to even phone the telecommunications company to place an order, to place the call to speak internationally. You had to be in line, you know, it was like a special, you know, they had the switchboards with a little pin,
Yeah.
you know, so they had, no, I promise you, that was it, you know. So life has changed, thanks God. So what I'm saying to you is that when the internet was created, we could not imagine the evolution of the internet. And the same way, I can assure you that now that we have the internet of value, very few people can sit today and say, I know the new apps that are going to be developed. Because it's the ingenuity of especially the younger generation, your age group, that is going to come up without being stuck with the past, with the legacy. You're going to start saying, why not? You know? And you're going to invent amazing things in the internet. So then the internet evolved in what we call the Web 2.0. Web 2.0 was when all these things, the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, came up with all these applications. But we didn't know, you know, they said, come and use us for free. Yeah, really? They were selling your data, no?
Yeah.
Now we know what happens when you use all these technologies. So the world has said, it's enough. You know, you're not going to abuse my data anymore. That data belongs to me. You're not going to make money out of me. This terrible, I don't know who you're selling it to. I have the right to be forgotten. You know, there was a court case, I don't know if you knew, in Europe, where this poor guy, he was insolvent, okay? And then over the years, he created a big company. But every time someone Googled him, they will see that he was insolvent because the technology did not delete the fact that he was insolvent, and now he was a very respected businessman. So he sued Google to say, I have the right to be forgotten. So that means you will not keep all that information about me. You will allow me to delete. And he won the current case, and then it became law in Europe that right to be forgotten. But why should we have to sue a company to delete your data that you don't want to be shared? So that's why many engineers around the world are coming together to say we need to build Web 3.0, 3.0. And that is one of the key value systems of ConsenSys. We are absolutely passionate about an internet that will go peer-to-peer. Not only peer-to-peer, every person will have their own data and at their own control. That's called self-sovereign, independent identity. What does it mean? Data, my ID, my passport, my degrees, my tokens that I own, shares, property, my registration of my motor vehicles, my insurance policies, all of that data, did I say qualifications? All of that data should not reside in the central database of someone that controls me. The biggest inspiration that I have for this beautiful development that is taking place around the world is when the people in Syria had to evacuate Syria in a hurry. They end up in many countries. Many were doctors, accountants, lawyers, engineers, and they end up sweeping the streets. Why? Because they could not prove that they were professionals. Why? Because the central database of the university got blown up. Okay? So imagine in the future, you will have your own cloud wherever you are in the world. With that, let's say that everything got blown out in the country you live in, you will be able to prove who you are, what you own, what degree, everything. And the most incredible application that people must not forget is health. Why health? Because I can tell you, I was very sick for a while, and every time I went to a doctor, they would ask me, okay, tell me your medical history. Trust me, when you're sick, you don't remember your name. My medical history is sitting in this doctor, that doctor, this hospital, this pathologist, this radiologist. Eventually, because I was really, really sick, you know what I did? I created my own database of my history, an Excel spreadsheet with everything, the history of the sickness I had. Thank God I'm fine. So every time I had to go to a doctor, I just gave them a memory stick and said, plug it in, there's the story, analyze it. In future, which is fascinating because I've been saying this for a long time, but COVID helped, we will not go to a doctor. We will have our complete database of our history. We will email it to the doctor. The doctor will get it, will put it into an AI that will have more information about all the possible combinations of that sickness and give you an informed decision that has been taken between the AI and his training or her training. They will together, AI and the person and the doctor, analyze the data without me visiting the rooms at all and tell me what is it that I have to do. So that means that doctors sitting in Harvard can then be doctors of someone living in the Sahara. Do you understand that now it opens up the ability for people to be able to consult with doctors from any country in the world, real time, with high speed, much more information about what's wrong. And this AI will consult databases around the world of cases. And not only that, once you have your own history, one of the areas that is fascinating, and we see it today with COVID, the pharmaceutical companies are asking people for data. You will be able to sell your data yourself. You're not going to have to rely on others to abuse your data. You will sell it directly, and you're going to monetize your data. And that means that can you see how the world will change completely?
It's going to be a completely different world.
Can you see self-sovereign identity? Just imagine how the world will change. So, and this is the world we're building. You know, ConsenSys has got an arm of self-sovereign identity in health. All the things that I mentioned, we are building that. And
Wow.
now what we need is governments to be committed. Because remember, governments are the worst in terms of central databases. The central database of your ID, of your passport, of your motor vehicle registration. All of that should now be decentralized and given back to the citizens. And, you know, I can tell you it's terrible in South Africa. I don't know how it is in Australia, but here, I just want to cry when I see the queues outside Home Affairs. You know, it's the government department that does the IDs, the passports, the birth certificates. You know that it requires a mother to bring a baby to Home Affairs to prove that the baby was born so that they can issue this certificate. This
Wow.
woman that had a baby a week ago are standing in the sun or in the rain in a queue in COVID times, exposing themselves waiting in a queue to go and get a birth certificate. That, for me, is a crime and to the people. And that should never happen in a time where you have the technology that can be issued electronically. You know, you can do a biometric of the child, but take a picture, you know, that immediately takes a picture, creates an ID, creates the birth certificate. And the woman doesn't have to go and stand in the queue waiting for this to happen. I stood in that queue watching this terrible thing happen to other people. And I actually went inside to say, can you at least get them chairs so they can sit, you know, or give priority to the woman with babies to go in first. Do you think they listen? Huh. So the point is, we need governments that care for the people to implement this technology, because this technology will change everything.
Most definitely. Look, we've gone for quite a while. We've just covered quite a lot of different topics. I think this is actually a record for around the blockchain in terms of the length of the episode. It's been fantastic. Look, do you have any closing thoughts at all, Monica?
Yes, the biggest closing thought is for governments, especially in developing countries. This technology truly can reduce corruption and fraud because it's transparent, it follows the complete audit trail. You know, in some countries, vaccines have disappeared. There's no need for that. We would have been able to track and trace of vaccines. We could have been able to track exactly where it goes, when the people get vaccinated, all that. You know, if governments are committed to eradicating corruption and fraud, it can be done. I used to work for the World Bank. The corruption we saw, it's, you know, it's well known, it's documented. Because you give money to governments, the money disappears, it never goes to the project that you give it to. That is not going to happen ever again. The World Bank will give money and will be able to track exactly in real time where the money goes. So if governments are committed, they should have a blueprint for how they're going to implement blockchain technology for the benefit of the people. That's it. The whole idea is, how do we finally benefit the people? And here's the technology that democratizes access to all these benefits and all these services that can be provided at very low cost, very cheaply, very fast, very simple. And encourage education, especially in computer languages. Yeah, so those are my words. If anybody from government ever listens to my podcast, yeah, I just say to them, guys, this is your chance of a lifetime. If you really care, this is it.
Monica, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I will push this out, and hopefully someone from some kind of government organization watches this and hears your message.
I hope so too. Thank you for the opportunity. It was great talking to you.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope to see you in South Africa soon.